Before the fire went out. That's when the best stories were told. Before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Folklore Crypt. It helps keep these stories alive and brings more folklore to your nights. And tell me, what time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. I love knowing when and where around the world these stories find you. Welcome. I'm glad you're here with me tonight. Tonight we journey to the remote valleys of South Africa. To a place that doesn't appear on maps. A village that exists in the space between the living and the dead. Where the boundary between worlds has worn so thin that crossing it requires nothing more than staying after sunset. This is not a story about brave survivors. There are no survivors. This is documentation. A record of why survival is impossible. Why the rules that govern this place cannot be followed by the living. Why every person who has attempted to stay the night has failed. Permanently. This is the Spirit Village. And these are the reasons you would not survive it. Let your breathing slow. Let these warnings settle into memory. Let yourself understand that some places were never meant for human presence after dark. That some territories belong entirely to forces we cannot negotiate with, cannot reason with, cannot escape from. We begin with how the village came to be. Because understanding its origin is understanding why it claims everyone who stays. The village has a name. In the local Zulu language, it translates roughly to the place where day ends. Not poetically, literally. This is the place where day ends and something else begins. Something that looks like night but isn't. Something that wears darkness like a living thing wears skin. 300 years ago, this was an ordinary village. Families lived here. Children played. Crops grew. Life happened in all its mundane, beautiful normalcy. Then came the war. Not the wars you read about in history books. A smaller conflict. A territorial dispute between two clans. The kind of violence that history forgets because it claimed only dozens of lives instead of thousands. But those dozens mattered. Especially how they died. The attacking clan didn't just kill the villagers. They performed a ritual as they killed them. A dark ritual designed to trap the souls. To prevent them from moving on to the ancestor realm. To bind them eternally to the place of their death. What? Revenge. The attacking clan's chief had lost his son to this village in an earlier skirmish. He wanted the village's people to suffer not just in death but after death. To be trapped. Unable to rest. Unable to join the ancestors. Unable to find peace. The ritual worked. Too well. The souls were trapped. But not passively. The violence of their deaths. The injustice of their binding. The rage of being denied their rightful place in the ancestor realm. All of this transformed them. They didn't become peaceful ghosts mourning their fate. They became something else. Something hungry. Something that viewed the living as either threats or prey. Something that claimed the entire village as their eternal territory. The attacking clan realized their mistake when they tried to occupy the village. Tried to claim it as conquest. They moved in at dawn. By the following dawn they were all dead. Found in positions suggesting they died trying to flee. Died screaming. Died in ways that had no physical explanation. Word spread. The village was abandoned. Left to the spirits who claimed it. For decades no one approached. The buildings slowly crumbled. The fields returned to wilderness. Nature reclaimed what humans had surrendered. But the spirits remained. Active. Where? Territorial. Waiting. Stories began to circulate. Travelers who passed near the village at night reported seeing lights. Hearing voices. Feeling watched. Some of these travelers disappeared. Their bodies found later, when found at all, showed signs of having run until their hearts gave out. Running from something. Running toward nothing. Just running until death caught them. The local communities established boundaries. drew maps showing the area to avoid, taught children that the old village was forbidden territory, especially after dark, especially alone. These warnings worked. Mostly, people stayed away. The spirit village remained isolated, dangerous but contained, until curiosity became stronger than caution. Over the centuries, various individuals have attempted to stay in the spirit village overnight, for different reasons. Some were skeptics trying to prove that spirits didn't exist. Some were spiritualists seeking contact with the dead. Some were simply foolish, drawn by the thrill of danger, the appeal of surviving what others couldn't. None succeeded. We know they failed because of what was found afterward: bodies, belongings, evidence of their attempts, and in recent decades, recordings, videos and audio that documented their experiences right up until the point where documentation became impossible. These recordings, combined with traditional knowledge from local spiritual authorities, have allowed us to document exactly why survival is impossible, why the rules that govern the spirit village cannot be followed, why attempting to stay the night is not brave but fatal. What follows is that documentation, the complete record of what makes the spirit village unsurvivable. Not theory, not speculation. Proven fact drawn from the evidence of all who tried and failed. The first thing you must understand is that the spirit village operates on different rules than the living world. The physical laws you rely on don't fully apply. Time moves strangely. Space bends in ways that shouldn't be possible. Cause and effect become untethered. This isn't metaphor. This is measurable. Recordings from the village show time discrepancies. A camera recording for what appears to be 10 minutes will show timestamps indicating 3 hours have passed, or 30 seconds. Time doesn't flow consistently. It pulls, skips, loops back on itself. This alone makes survival nearly impossible. You cannot plan, cannot pace yourself, cannot know how long until dawn. You might think you've endured for hours only to discover minutes have passed. Or you might believe dawn is approaching only to find you're still in the first hour of darkness. But time distortion is just the foundation. The actual dangers are far more specific, far more deadly, and far more unavoidable. The spirits that inhabit the village are not uniform. They're individuals, each retaining aspects of who they were in life, each transformed by death and binding into something new. Something dangerous in unique ways. There are the Watchers, spirits who stand at the village boundary, motionless, silent. They don't attack, don't threaten, just watch, waiting for you to enter. Once you cross the boundary they guard, they mark you, track you, ensure you cannot leave the same way you entered. There are the Children, the spirits of those who died young in the original massacre. They appear as they were, small, innocent looking. They call out, ask for help, beg you to play with them, follow them. If you respond, if you acknowledge them in any way, they lead you deeper into the village, away from any possible exit, into areas where other, more dangerous spirits wait. There are the Elders, the oldest souls, the ones who had status and power in life. They've retained that power in death, amplified it. They can manifest physically, can move objects, can create sounds indistinguishable from living voices. They use this ability to confuse, to disorient, to make you doubt your own senses. There are the Angry Ones, spirits who died violently, who remained conscious through their deaths, who carry that violence with them eternally. These are the most dangerous, the most aggressive, the ones who actively hunt anyone living who enters their territory. And there are others, spirits whose nature is harder to categorize, who may have been affected by the binding ritual in ways that created something entirely new, something that never existed before, something that shouldn't exist at all. Understanding these different types of spirits is crucial to understanding why survival is impossible. Because the rules you'd need to follow to avoid one type will violate the rules needed to avoid another. You're caught in impossible contradiction. Damned by action and damned by inaction equally. Let me be specific. Let me document the actual rules. The things you would need to do to survive. And why each one is impossible. Rule 1. Do not acknowledge the spirits. This sounds simple. Just ignore them. Pretend they're not there. This works in some spiritual traditions. In the spirit village it fails immediately. Because the spirits will not be ignored. They will manifest in ways that demand response. They will create emergencies that require action. They will put you in situations where ignoring them means death from other causes. A spirit child will appear injured, bleeding, crying for help. Your instinct, your human decency, will demand you help. But helping means acknowledging, means interaction, means giving them permission to escalate. Or an elder spirit will manifest as a living person, will approach and speak to you as if they're another lost traveler, will seem so real, so human that refusing to acknowledge them feels insane. But the moment you respond, the moment you accept their reality, you've broken the rule. You've opened the door. Rule 2, do not speak. Sound attracts spirits. Your voice carries energy they can feed on. Speaking gives them material to work with, to mimic, to use against you. So you must remain silent, completely silent, for the entire night, no matter what you see, no matter what you hear. No matter how badly you want to scream. But this rule contradicts with survival needs. If you hear footsteps approaching, if you see something moving toward you in darkness, your instinct demands you call out, demands you use voice as defense, as warning, as last resort. The spirits know this. They create situations where remaining silent feels more dangerous than speaking. Where your survival instinct overrides your knowledge of the rules. And the moment you speak, they have you. Rule 3, do not run. Running triggers the hunt reflex. Many of the spirits, especially the angry ones, are activated by fleeing prey. They've spent centuries in this state, waiting. When something runs, they chase. It's no longer conscious. It's reflex, pattern. Eternal repetition. So you must walk, slowly, deliberately, calmly. No matter how terrified you are. No matter what you see behind you. No matter how close the danger feels. But this contradicts with human survival instinct. When facing mortal danger we run. It's biological, deeper than conscious choice. Your body will attempt to run even when your mind knows you shouldn't. And the spirits know this too. They create situations where not running seems impossible. Where walking means certain death and running means death slightly slower. Rule 4, do not look directly at them. Eye contact creates connection. Allows the spirits to see into you as much as you see them. Gives them access to your fears, your memories, your weaknesses. Some spirits can use this access to create illusions. To make you see things that aren't there. To turn your own mind against you. So you must look away. Must use peripheral vision. Must never meet their eyes directly even when they're standing right in front of you demanding acknowledgement. But this too contradicts survival. In danger we need to see threats clearly. Need direct visual information to make decisions. Looking away from danger feels wrong at every instinctive level. Your body fights against it. Your eyes drag toward the threat no matter how hard you try to resist. And some spirits know this. Will position themselves so that looking away means looking toward greater danger. Will force you to choose which threat to face. Either choice breaks a rule. Either choice brings consequences. Rule 5. Do not touch anything. The physical objects in the village, the remnants of buildings, the old tools, the scattered possessions, are not empty. They're inhabited. Claimed. Touching them is trespass. Violation. The spirits respond to this violation immediately and violently. So you must move through the village without disturbing anything. Must avoid contact with walls, with ground more than necessary, with any object no matter how innocuous it seems. But the village is old. Crumbling. The paths are uneven. Debris everywhere. Moving through it without touching anything is nearly impossible even in daylight with full visibility. At night, in darkness, with only moonlight or a torch to see by, it becomes completely impossible. You will touch something. It's not whether. It's when. And what happens when you do. These are just 5 of the rules. There are more. Many more. Each equally impossible. Each contradicting others. Each enforced by spirits who have had centuries to perfect their roles as enforcers. And here's the crucial thing. The thing that makes survival truly impossible. The spirits don't enforce these rules fairly. They don't wait for you to break one before responding. They create situations where you must break rules. Where following one means violating another. Where your only choices are between different forms of violation. This is intentional. This is the trap. The village isn't just haunted. It's designed. Structured. The spirits have had 300 years to perfect their territory. To turn it into a perfect maze where every path leads to the same end. Let me give you a specific example. Documented from one of the recorded attempts. A researcher named David entered the village at sunset. Properly prepared. He knew the rules. Had studied every account. Had protective amulets from local spiritual authorities. Had planned his route carefully. Was in peak physical condition. Was neither skeptic nor fool. Just someone who believed preparation could overcome danger. He lasted 4 hours. The first hour was manageable. He moved slowly through the outer area of the village. Saw spirits watching from broken windows. Heard voices calling from darkness. Felt presences moving parallel to his path. But he followed the rules. Didn't acknowledge. Didn't speak. Didn't run. Didn't make eye contact. Didn't touch anything. The second hour, the pressure increased. A child spirit appeared directly in his path. Crying. Bleeding from a wound that looked fresh. The spirit didn't ask for help. Just stood there. Blocking his way. Staring at him with pleading eyes. David knew this was a test. Knew acknowledging the spirit meant failure. He walked around it. Didn't speak. Didn't make eye contact. Kept moving. The child spirit followed. Matching his pace. Still crying. The sound designed to trigger compassion. To make ignoring it feel monstrous. But David maintained discipline. Kept following the rules. Then the spirit changed tactics. Ran ahead of him. Positioned itself at a narrow passage between 2 collapsed walls. The only clear path forward. To continue, David would have to pass within inches of the spirit. Would have to not acknowledge it while it was close enough to touch. David chose a different path. Went around the collapsed buildings. This meant touching walls. Breaking Rule 5. But he judged this violation as lesser. As more survivable. The moment his hand touched the wall to steady himself, something changed. The spirits became more active. More aggressive. As if the violation had given them permission to escalate. The third hour, David found himself surrounded. Not physically. But the spirits were everywhere. Standing at every potential exit. Moving in patterns that herded him toward the center of the village. Away from the boundaries. Deeper into their territory. He tried to resist. Tried to maintain his planned route. But every path he chose was blocked. Every direction he turned revealed more spirits. And they were no longer just watching. They were moving. Coordinating. Working together to trap him. David made a decision. He ran. Breaking Rule 3. but staying felt more dangerous than flight. At least running gave him agency, movement, the possibility of escape, even if that possibility was illusion. The moment he ran, the hunt began. Spirits that had been merely watching became active pursuers, moving faster than any living thing. Not in straight lines, but appearing ahead of him, behind him, to his sides, hurting him, driving him deeper, away from any possible exit. David ran for what felt like minutes, but his camera recorded 37 minutes. Time dilation at its most extreme. By the end he was lost, completely disoriented. The village that he'd mapped carefully looked different, changed, rearranged. In the fourth hour, David's recording becomes disturbing. He's in an area of the village that doesn't match his maps. Buildings that shouldn't exist. Paths that lead nowhere. And the spirits are no longer just chasing. They're playing. Taking turns appearing in front of him. Making him change direction. Exhausting him. His breathing on the recording is ragged. Desperate. He's talking to himself. Breaking rule 2. But beyond caring. Beyond following rules. Just trying to survive minute by minute. Then the recording shows something standing directly in his path. An elder spirit. Manifested fully. Looking completely solid. Completely real. Staring directly at him with eyes that reflect his torchlight. David stops running. Makes eye contact. Breaking rule 4. But he's past the point of discipline. Past the point of strategy. He's just a terrified human facing something impossible. The elder spirit speaks. David's recording captures the words, but they don't make sense. They're in a language that isn't language. Sounds that hurt to hear. That make your brain feel wrong. That trigger nausea and disorientation even through a recording made decades later. David responds. Trying to communicate. Trying to negotiate. But his words come out wrong. Slurred. Like he's forgotten how to speak. Like language itself is breaking down. The recording becomes corrupted at this point. Video glitches. Audio distorts. What remains shows David backing away. Then running again. Then falling. Then the camera tumbling. Recording ground. Sky. Broken buildings spinning. The sound of breathing. Of crying. Of something that might be screaming but pitched wrong. Too high or too low to be human. The recording ends at 4 hours 17 minutes. Battery fully charged when David entered. Should have lasted 12 hours minimum. His body was found 3 days later. Not far from where the recording ended. Death attributed to cardiac arrest brought on by extreme stress and exertion. But that's the official cause. The medical explanation. It doesn't account for his expression, for what his face showed, for the fact that his eyes were open and his features were locked in something beyond terror, beyond anything normally possible for human musculature to sustain. This is just one example. There are others, many others, each following similar patterns, each documenting the same impossible rules, the same contradictions, the same inevitable failure. David's attempt was methodical, prepared. He represents what should have been the best chance at survival. Yet he lasted only 4 hours. This tells us something crucial about the spirit village. Preparation doesn't matter. Knowledge doesn't matter. The outcome is predetermined by the nature of the place itself. But to fully understand why survival is impossible, we need to document what happens during different phases of the night. Because the village doesn't remain static. It changes as darkness deepens, as midnight approaches, as the hours stretch toward dawn that never seems to come for those trapped inside. The spirit village operates on a schedule. Not precise, not clockwork, but patterns have been observed, documented through multiple failed attempts, through recordings that captured partial information before corruption, through testimony from those who observed from outside the boundaries, from spiritual authorities who understand the mechanics of such places. There are 5 phases of night in the spirit village, each more dangerous than the last, each introducing new threats, new impossibilities, new reasons why survival cannot happen. Phase 1 begins at sunset. This is called the watching hour, the time between last light and full darkness, roughly 30 minutes to an hour depending on season. During this phase the spirits are passive, observing, assessing, deciding how to respond to your presence. This is the safest phase. If any part of the night could be called safe, the spirits haven't committed to action yet. They're still determining whether you're threat, prey, or opportunity. They watch from distances, make no direct approach, create no immediate danger. This is when most people feel confident, when preparation seems adequate, when rules seem followable. The village during the watching hour looks almost normal, abandoned but normal. Just old buildings and overgrown paths. Nothing obviously supernatural. Nothing that screams danger. This false sense of security is intentional. The spirits learned long ago that frightened prey makes mistakes, panics, becomes unpredictable. But confident prey follows patterns, makes logical decisions, becomes predictable, easier to herd, easier to trap. So they wait. They watch. They let you settle into false comfort. Let you believe you might actually survive. Let you think the stories were exaggerated. That your preparation was sufficient. That you're different from all who failed before. Then phase 2 begins. The calling hour. This starts when full darkness settles. When the last natural light fades completely. When the village transitions from abandoned to inhabited. When the spirits become active. The calling hour is exactly what it sounds like. The spirits call to you, using voices, using sounds, using every auditory trigger they've learned affects humans. They've had 300 years to study what makes us respond, what bypasses our rational mind and hits us at instinctive level. They call using children's voices, crying, begging for help, calling for parents. The sound designed to trigger protective instinct, to make ignoring it feel morally wrong, to force you to choose between humanity and survival. They call using adult voices, authoritative, commanding, telling you to come, to follow, to obey, using tones that trigger childhood conditioning, that make disobedience feel dangerous even when obedience is clearly more dangerous. They call using familiar voices. Somehow they access your memories, your connections. They mimic people you know, people you love, people you trust, your mother, your friend, your sibling. The voice exactly right, the tone perfectly matched, calling your name, asking why you're ignoring them, begging you to respond. This is when Rule 2, do not speak, becomes nearly impossible to maintain. Because every fiber of your being wants to respond, wants to call back, wants to answer the familiar voice. Your brain knows it's not real, but your heart doesn't care. The emotional response overrides rational knowledge. Those who break during the calling hour typically do so by speaking, by answering, by calling out. And the moment they do, the spirits have what they need. Voice to mimic, energy to feed on, permission to escalate. A woman named Sarah documented her attempt. She lasted through the watching hour perfectly, maintained all protocols, moved carefully through the village edge, positioned herself in a relatively defensible location. A partially intact building with only one entrance. Good sight lines. Minimal blind spots. Then the calling hour began. Sarah's recording captures the voices. First children. She ignored them successfully. Stayed silent. Stayed disciplined. Then adult voices. Authorities. Commands. She remained strong. Didn't respond. Then her sister's voice. Sarah's sister had died 3 years earlier in a car accident. They'd been close. Sarah's grief was still fresh, still painful. And now her sister's voice, calling her name, using the nickname only family knew, asking why Sarah was there, saying she was scared, begging Sarah to come find her. Sarah lasted 18 minutes. You can hear her struggling on the recording, breathing hard, crying, fighting against every instinct, every emotional bond, every memory of the sister she'd loved. Then she broke, called out, just one word, her sister's name, just once. But once was enough. The response was immediate. The sister's voice changed, became something else, keeping the familiar tone but adding something underneath, something wrong, something that made the familiar voice into something horrifying rather than comforting. The voice began calling from different locations, simultaneously. Sarah's sister's voice coming from 3 directions at once, each perfectly synced, each calling Sarah's name, each begging her to come. Sarah ran, abandoning her defensive position, breaking Rule 3. But staying there with those voices surrounding her felt impossible. She ran deeper into the village, away from the voices, away from the twisted familiar comfort that had become threat. Her recording continues for another hour before corruption. It documents the transition into Phase 3, the hurting hour, when the spirits stop calling and start directing, pushing, guiding, moving you exactly where they want you. Phase 3 is perhaps the most insidious, because the danger isn't obvious, isn't direct. You're not being chased or attacked. You're being positioned, arranged, set up for what comes later. The spirits appear at strategic locations, blocking paths, creating obstacles, making certain routes impossible while leaving others clear. You think you're choosing your own path, making your own decisions, but you're being herded like livestock, guided toward specific areas, specific buildings, specific positions within the village. Why? Because the village's geography isn't uniform in spiritual density. Some areas are more heavily inhabited than others. Some buildings contain stronger spirits. Some locations are where the worst deaths occurred during the original massacre. These places are more dangerous, more deadly, more impossible to survive. The spirits during Phase 1 and 2 identify which approach will work on you, what you respond to, what frightens you, what angers you, what triggers your protective instincts or your survival instincts or your curiosity. Then during Phase 3, they use this knowledge to herd you to the location best suited to finish you. They make the deadly area look like safety. Make the trapped position look like escape route. Make the worst possible place look like the best possible choice. A group of 3 attempted the village together, thinking numbers would provide safety, thinking they could watch each other's backs, cover more angles, maintain discipline through mutual support. They were separated during Phase 3, not by force, by subtle maneuvering. A child spirit appeared crying. One member of the group moved to investigate despite the rules, drew away. The other 2 continued forward, but now their path diverged. One went left around a collapsed building. One went right, each thinking the other would meet them on the far side. They never met again. The village had done what it does, isolated them, turned 3 into 3 singles, each now alone, each more vulnerable, each being herded toward different deadly locations. Only one of them was recording. His footage shows him searching for his companions, calling their names, breaking Rule 2 but justified because this was emergency. This was survival. Finding each other mattered more than silence. But the spirits used his calls, mimicked his voice, drew his companions in different directions. made them think they were responding to him when they were responding to imitation. The village became a maze where every call for help led you further from actual help and closer to something pretending to be help. Phase 3 lasts the longest, 2 to 3 hours typically. The slow, patient work of positioning prey exactly where the final trap will spring. This is when time distortion becomes most severe. When people lose all sense of how long they've been in the village. When exhaustion begins to seriously impair judgment. When small injuries from stumbling in darkness accumulate into serious problems. When dehydration and fear and disorientation combine to break down mental resistance. Then comes phase 4. The revelation hour. This is when the spirits stop pretending. Stop being subtle. Stop maintaining any illusion that escape is possible. This is when they reveal the true nature of their territory. When the masks come off. When you see what the village actually is. Phase 4 is when the village changes. Not metaphorically. Physically. The buildings rearrange themselves. Paths that existed no longer do. Walls that were broken become whole. Structures that were empty become occupied. The village rebuilds itself. Returns to some version of what it was before the massacre. Before the binding. Before death claimed it. And the spirits manifest fully. Stop being glimpses and shadows. Become visible. Solid seeming. They walk through the village as if still alive. As if you're the ghost and they're the living inhabitants. They go about their routines. Their eternal repetitions. Living out fragments of the lives stolen from them. But they're not alive. And when they notice you, when they focus on you, you realize that whatever mercy or indifference they showed during earlier phases is gone. Now they see you as violation. As trespass. As living in their domain of death. A man named John was recording during phase 4. His footage is among the most disturbing. Not because of graphic violence. But because of the sheer impossibility. The wrongness. The way reality bends until it breaks. His recording shows the village transforming around him. Buildings repairing themselves in reverse. Broken walls flowing back together like water running backward. Collapsed roofs rising up and sealing. Doors that didn't exist moments ago now standing whole and closed. And through windows that were empty frames seconds before and now have glass, shapes moving. Human shapes. Living routines. Cooking. Talking. Children playing. John stands frozen. Watching impossible reality reshape itself. The village becoming what it was. 300 years dissolving. Present sliding into past. And he's standing in the middle of it. The only living person in a resurrected ghost town. Then the spirits notice him. Turn and look. And their expressions change. Confusion. Then anger. Terrible anger. Because in their experience, their eternal trapped experience, this is their village. Their home. Their territory. And there's a stranger. An outsider. A violation of everything they're protecting. They move toward him. Walking at first. Then faster. Then running. And John runs too. Breaking rule 3 but beyond caring. Beyond rules. Beyond anything except base survival instinct. But the village has been reshaped. The paths he knew are gone. The exits he identified don't exist in this version of reality. He's lost in a place that's simultaneously familiar and completely alien. Running through streets that shouldn't be there. Past buildings that were ruins minutes ago and are now intact. Chased by dead people who think they're defending their living home from an intruder. John's recording ends when he falls. The camera tumbles. Catches glimpses of spirits surrounding him. Reaching for him. Their hands solid enough to touch. Solid enough to grab. The recording glitches. Audio becomes screaming. Then silence. Then nothing. His body was found inside a building that had been completely collapsed for centuries. Somehow he died inside intact walls that shouldn't have existed. The door sealed from outside. No way he could have entered. No way he could have left. Just his body. In an impossible location. With expressions suggesting he died trying to escape something in that enclosed space. Something that wasn't there when the body was found but had been there when he died. Phase 4 typically lasts 1 to 2 hours. It's the most intense period. The most dangerous. The most impossible to survive. But it's not the final phase. Because there's one more. One last mechanism of the spirit village. One ultimate reason why survival cannot happen. Phase 5. The claiming hour. This is the hour before dawn. The darkest time. When night is deepest and dawn feels simultaneously close and impossibly distant. When exhaustion is total. When hope is gone. When the spirits reveal their final purpose. The claiming hour is when the spirits stop chasing. Stop threatening. Stop attacking. Because they don't need to anymore. They've herded you to the right place. Positioned you correctly. Exhausted you completely. Broken your will. Now they simply wait. Because the village itself is about to do what they've been preparing you for. The spirit village isn't just haunted. It's a trap. A spiritual mechanism designed to capture and bind souls the way the original villagers' souls were captured and bound. The massacre created the mechanism. The 300 years of trapped spirits have powered it, maintained it, perfected it, and that mechanism activates during Phase 5. It starts subtly. You feel heavier, like gravity has increased, like your body weighs more than it should. Moving becomes difficult. Each step requires more effort. Your limbs feel like lead. Your head feels too heavy for your neck. Exhaustion that was already severe becomes crushing. Then you start forgetting. Not everything. Not even most things. Just specific things. Like which direction you came from. Like what the world outside the village looks like. Like the names of people you love. Like your own name. Memory dissolving. Identity fragmenting. Sense of self eroding like shore under relentless waves. Then you feel the pull. The village pulling at you. Not physically. Spiritually. Like hooks embedded in your soul. Like the village itself has claimed part of you and is now drawing the rest in. Drawing you down. Drawing you into the earth. Into the buildings. Into the eternal binding that holds all the other spirits. This is what the ritual did. Created a binding mechanism. A trap that doesn't just kill. It captures. It adds you to the collection. Makes you another spirit. Another prisoner. Another enforcer of the trap for whoever comes next. And here's the terrible thing. The thing that makes Phase 5 truly unsurvivable. By the time you understand what's happening, you're too exhausted to resist. Too broken. Too worn down by the previous 4 phases. The spirits didn't need to kill you. They just needed to exhaust you. To break your will. To drain your resistance until the claiming could happen without fight. A researcher named Mary documented this phase. She was studying the village academically. Had extensive background in South African spiritualism. Understood the cultural context. Had consulted with traditional healers and sangomas before attempting entry. Had protective charms blessed specifically for this purpose. Had support team outside the boundary ready to intervene if possible. She lasted until Phase 5. Her recording captures the transition. The way exhaustion becomes something more than physical. The way her voice changes as she documents what's happening. Becoming distant. Detached. Like she's narrating someone else's experience rather than her own. She describes the heaviness. The forgetting. The pull. Her words becoming slower. Slurred. Like she's falling asleep standing up. Like consciousness is bleeding away despite her attempts to maintain it. Then she does something remarkable. She uses her last moments of clarity to document exactly what's happening internally, what the claiming feels like. She describes feeling stretched, split, like she's in multiple places simultaneously, still in her body but also pulled into the earth, into the buildings, into the eternal space where the other spirits exist. She describes seeing them, not with physical eyes, with whatever sense operates in that eternal space. Hundreds of spirits, the original villagers, the attackers who tried to occupy afterward, the travelers who disappeared over centuries, everyone the village has claimed, all existing in state between life and death, between past and present, between trapped and free. She describes them welcoming her, not with joy, with resignation, like prisoners watching a new prisoner join them, understanding her situation because they share it, unable to help because help is impossible here. Mary's final words on the recording are, "I understand now. The village doesn't kill you, keeps you. Forever. The curse wasn't on the village. The curse is the village. And now I'm part of it. Now I'm." The recording ends. Battery showed 90% charge remaining. Recording time showed 37 hours had passed despite sunset to dawn being only 12 hours maximum. Time had compressed and expanded simultaneously. Subjective experience and objective time no longer aligned. Mary's body was never found. Not in the village. Not near it. Not anywhere. She didn't die. She was claimed. Added to the collection. Became one more spirit enforcing the trap for whoever comes next. This is Phase 5. The ultimate mechanism. The reason survival is truly impossible. Because surviving means lasting until dawn. But the village ensures that lasting until dawn means being claimed. Means joining the eternal collection. Means becoming part of the trap yourself. And even if, impossibly, someone remained unclaimed until dawn, Phase 5 has one more mechanism. One final trap. Because dawn in the spirit village isn't what dawn means outside it. Dawn in the spirit village is not escape. This is perhaps the cruelest deception. The idea that lasting until sunrise means survival. That daylight will break whatever power holds the place. That morning will reset the danger and allow departure. This is not how the spirit village works. Dawn does come. The sun does rise over the valley. Light does return. But the light that enters the spirit village is not the same light that illuminates the world outside. It's filtered, changed. Passing through the spiritual barrier that defines the village boundaries changes its nature. Makes it different. Physical dawn arrives. But spiritual dawn doesn't. The village remains in its eternal night. The darkness isn't absence of light but presence of something else. Something that exists independent of light or dark. Something that wears night-like form rather than experiencing it as condition. So when sunrise comes, the village doesn't release you. Doesn't return to safe abandoned state. The spirits don't withdraw. The phases don't reset. You're simply in continued danger but now with visibility. Which somehow makes it worse. Because now you can see clearly what's hunting you. Can watch the spirits manifesting in daylight that should banish them but doesn't. A man named Thomas believed that lasting until dawn meant survival. His strategy was simple. Find the most defensible position, establish a perimeter and endure. Don't explore. Don't move unnecessarily. Just exist within safe space until sunlight released him. He entered the village just before sunset. Immediately located a small stone structure that was mostly intact. Single entrance. Solid walls. Good sight lines. He positioned himself inside. Set up his equipment. Prepared for a long night of simply waiting. His recording documents 11 hours. Far longer than most. He maintained discipline through all 5 phases. During the watching hour he stayed completely still. Let the spirits observe without giving them anything to respond to. During the calling hour he used noise-canceling headphones. Blocked out the voices. Couldn't hear the familiar sounds. Couldn't be tempted to respond. Simple solution. Effective. During the hurting hour he didn't move. Couldn't be hurted if he refused to go anywhere. The spirits tried to lure him out. Tried to create emergencies. But Thomas stayed in his defensible position. Waiting. Phase 4 was harder. The village transformed around him. His structure became different. Walls that were rough stone became smooth plaster. Floor that was dirt became wood. Windows that were empty frames gained glass. He watched his shelter change into something else. Something from 300 years ago. But he didn't leave. Didn't panic. Just documented the changes. Maintained his position. Phase 5 hit him hardest. The heaviness. The forgetting. The pull. He felt all of it. His recording shows him struggling. Fighting to stay conscious. Fighting to maintain sense of self. Fighting the claiming. But his shelter helped. The structure itself seemed to provide some resistance. Some grounding. Like being inside walls, even spiritually transformed walls, created boundary the claiming couldn't easily cross. Thomas lasted until sunrise. His recording shows light entering through the windows. Natural light. Morning light. He can be heard crying with relief. Thanking God. Preparing to leave. Then he looks outside. The spirits haven't left. They're still there. Visible in daylight. Standing in the street. Surrounding his structure. Waiting. Not watching from distance like phase 1. Not calling or hurting. Just standing. Blocking every exit. In full sunlight. Undimmed. Undiminished. Thomas realizes dawn didn't end the danger. Just changed it. He's still trapped. Still claimed by phase 5 even if not fully absorbed yet. And now he has a new problem. His supplies won't last forever. His water is nearly gone. His food was calculated for one night of endurance. Not indefinite siege. He tries to wait them out. Hopes that maybe the spirits will withdraw when enough time passes. When the sun is fully up. When morning becomes afternoon. They don't. Hours pass. The spirits remain. Patient. Eternal. They have all the time in the world. Thomas doesn't. By afternoon he's desperate. Dehydrated. Exhausted beyond measure. The claiming pull has never stopped. Has been working on him constantly. Slowly eroding his connection to life. Slowly pulling him into the eternal state the other spirits inhabit. He makes a decision. He'll run. Choose one direction. Charge through the spirits. Maybe shock and momentum will carry him past them. Maybe he can break through before they react. It's not a good plan. But it's the only plan he has left. Thomas's recording shows him preparing. Psyching himself up. Counting down. Then he bursts through the door. Running full speed. Aimed at what looks like the thinnest line of spirits. The point where he might break through. He gets 3 steps. The spirits move. Faster than physics allows. Surrounding him instantly. Not grabbing. Not attacking. Just surrounding. Creating a wall. Solid. Impenetrable. Made of bodies that were misty moments ago and are now dense as living flesh. Thomas stops. Trapped in a circle of spirits. In full daylight. Under clear sky. With the sun proving that morning came and changed nothing. The recording shows him turning. Looking at each spirit. Seeing their faces clearly. Seeing that they're not monsters. Not demons. Just people. Dead people. Trapped people. People who were once living and are now eternal prisoners. People who look at him with something like pity because they know what comes next. One of them speaks. An older woman. Her voice clear on the recording. Speaking Zulu. Thomas doesn't understand the language, but the tone is unmistakable, gentle, almost maternal, explaining something, comforting him about what's about to happen. Then Thomas collapses, not from attack, from the claiming finally completing, the pull becoming too strong to resist. His body falls, but his recording continues for another minute, shows his eyes still open, still moving, still seeing, while his body lies motionless. The disconnect between consciousness and flesh as the claiming separates them. The recording cuts off suddenly. Not battery failure. Just ends. As if whatever was recording decided to stop. As if the mechanism no longer had operator capable of operating it. Thomas's body was found inside his defensive structure. The door still barred from inside. Windows intact. No way anyone or anything could have brought him back in. Yet there he was, in the same position he'd started the night. As if he never left. As if his recorded attempt to break through the spirits never happened. Medical examination showed death by dehydration, which made no sense. He'd entered the village with sufficient water. The time elapsed was less than 24 hours. Dehydration that severe would take days. Unless time inside the village wasn't the same as time outside. Unless he'd experienced days while the external world experienced hours. Unless the dawn he saw wasn't the first dawn but the 10th, the 20th. Time looping or stretching until his body gave out from needs his mind didn't register because consciousness was disconnected by claiming. This is what makes dawn irrelevant. The village exists outside normal time. Outside the rule that daylight ends darkness. Outside the comfort that morning brings safety. Inside the village, night never truly ends. Dawn is just night with different lighting. And lasting until dawn just means extending your suffering. Prolonging your claiming. Giving the village more time to fully absorb you. So we've established that the phases of night are unsurvivable. That the rules contradict each other. That dawn provides no escape. But there's more. More mechanisms. More reasons. More impossible challenges. Let's return to the rules. Examine them more deeply. Understand not just that they're impossible but why they're designed to be impossible. Rule 6. Do not enter any building. The structures in the village, the houses, the meeting places, the storage buildings, are the most spiritually dense locations. These are where people lived, where they died, where their final moments happened, where their souls were bound. Entering buildings means entering spaces with concentrated spiritual presence, with memories soaked into walls, with death embedded in foundations. But this rule contradicts with basic survival strategy. Buildings provide shelter, protection from elements, defensive positions. When in danger, when being chased, the instinct is to find cover, to get inside, to put walls between yourself and threat. The spirits know this. During phase 3 and 4, they chase people toward buildings. Make the open space seem more dangerous than enclosed space. Make entering seem like safety when it's actually the most dangerous choice possible. And here's the additional problem. Some buildings have doorways that face the boundary. Look like exits. Look like if you run through the building out the back you'll reach the edge of the village. Reach escape. But buildings in the spirit village don't have backs. They're spatial paradoxes. Enter the front door and you're not in normal three-dimensional space anymore. You're in folded space. Compressed space. Space that connects to the eternal realm where the spirits exist. Walk forward thinking you'll reach the back and you just walk deeper. And deeper. And deeper. Into impossible interior that has no end because it's not really interior. It's passage to somewhere else. Somewhere you'll never return from. A young woman named Helen entered a building during phase 4. She was being chased by manifested spirits. Ran into what looked like a simple storage house. Single room. Small. She could see daylight through the back window. Thought she could run straight through. Out the other side. Away from pursuers. Her recording shows her entering. The front door is visible behind her. The back window ahead. She runs. But the distance isn't right. What should be 10 steps becomes 20. Then 40. The back window getting no closer. The front door no longer visible behind. She stops. Realizes something is wrong. Turns around to go back. The front door isn't there. She's in a corridor now. Not a room. Walls extending in both directions. No exits visible. Just passage that shouldn't exist in a structure that was too small to contain it. Helen runs back the way she came. The corridor doesn't end. Extends impossibly. Other doors appear in the walls. Doors that weren't there seconds ago. Doors that lead to other impossible spaces. Other corridors. Other rooms. An entire maze inside a building that from outside was single-room storage. Her recording continues for 18 minutes. Shows her running. Opening doors. Finding only more maze. More impossible architecture. No way forward. No way back. No way out. Just endless interior that breaks every law of physical space. Then she sees someone. Another person. Standing in the corridor ahead. Not a spirit. A living person. Another victim. Someone else who entered a building and got lost in impossible interior. Helen calls out. The person looks at her. And Helen realizes this person is old. Ancient. Clothes from a different century. Body worn by time in ways that should mean death. But alive. Still moving. Still existing. Somehow. This person has been in the building for how long? Decades? Centuries? Time doesn't flow normally in the folded spaces inside village structures. You can't age to death because death doesn't work here. You just exist. Wandering. Searching for exit that doesn't exist. Growing older but never dying. Trapped more completely than the spirits because they at least have the entire village. This person has only endless corridor. Helen's recording ends when she meets this person. The ancient lost one reaches out. Touches Helen. The recording glitches. Corrupts. Ends. Helen's body was never found. Not in the village. Not in any building. Just gone. Claimed not by spirits but by the impossible spaces inside structures that should be simple but are infinite. This is Rule 6. Don't enter buildings. But the village makes entering buildings look like survival. Like escape. Like safety. Until you discover that buildings are prisons worse than the village itself. Traps within traps. Mazes with no solutions. Spaces where even death becomes impossible because death requires time and time doesn't flow right in folded space. Rule 7. Do not accept help. Sometimes, rarely, you might encounter someone else in the village. Another person attempting the same impossible survival. Two people have better chance than one. Combining resources. Watching each other's backs. Supporting each other's courage. This is wrong. This is trap. The person you meet is never actually another living human. It's spirit. Manifested. Disguised. Playing role. The spirits learned long ago that humans trust other humans. That we cooperate instinctively. That offering help and accepting help is how we survive most dangers. So they use it. Appear human. Appear living. Appear to be fellow victim. Create perfect disguise. Wait for you to drop your guard. To trust. To accept help. Then reveal what they actually are. But the disguise is perfect. Absolutely perfect. They breathe. They bleed if cut. They show fear and confusion and all the right emotions. There's no way to tell. No test that works. No signal that reveals the deception. The only certainty is that anyone you meet in the spirit village is not what they appear to be. This rule makes cooperation impossible. Even if two real living people enter the village together, like the group of 3 documented earlier, they can't trust each other. Because if they're separated and reunite, Is the person who returns actually your companion? Or spirit wearing their face? You can't know. Can't risk assuming. Must treat everyone as threat. Must survive alone even if you're not alone. This rule breaks human nature at fundamental level. We're social creatures. Cooperative creatures. Our entire evolution is built on working together. Being forced to treat cooperation as danger, help as attack, other humans as disguised threat. It goes against everything we are. Creates psychological stress that compounds the physical danger. Makes survival not just physically impossible but mentally impossible. A father and son entered the village together. Thought family bond would protect them. That knowing each other perfectly would let them see through any deception. They stayed together through phase 1 and 2 successfully. Then phase 3 separated them. Not violently. Just by creating situations where splitting up briefly made sense. Check 2 directions. Cover more ground. Meet back at designated point. The son returned to the meeting point. Waited. The father arrived. Looked right. Sounded right. Knew things only the father should know. Passed every test the son could think of. But something felt wrong. Just slightly. Maybe the way he walked. Maybe the timing of his return. Maybe nothing concrete. Just instinct. Just feeling. The sons get saying this isn't actually your father even though all evidence suggests it is. What do? Trust feeling over evidence? Or trust evidence over feeling? Both choices could be fatal. Accepting help from spirit in father's form is death. Refusing help from actual father means abandoning family. Means making him survive alone when he doesn't have to. Both choices are wrong. Both lead to disaster. The son chose evidence. Chose trust. Chose to believe this was his father. They continued together. Made it through phase 4. Phase 5. Lasted until dawn. Both survived in the sense that dawn came and they were both still alive and conscious. Then as they prepared to leave, the father spoke. Said something. Just one sentence. Used a word. A term of endearment he always used for his son. Had used since the son was infant. Personal. Specific. Perfect. But wrong. Slightly wrong. The inflection wasn't quite right. The emphasis fell on the wrong syllable. Tiny difference. Almost imperceptible. But wrong. The son realized. The thing he'd been traveling with all night wasn't his father. Was spirit wearing father's face. Knowing father's memories. Playing role perfectly. But not quite perfectly enough to maintain the deception at moment when guard was fully dropped. When the son was relaxed enough to notice tiny imperfection that had been there all along but was too subtle to catch during high stress of surviving phases. The son ran. Abandoning the false father. Breaking rule 3 but beyond caring. Just running. And behind him, the false father dropped disguise. Stopped pretending. The voice that called after him wasn't father's voice anymore. Was something else. Something that had never been human. Something that had worn humanity like costume for entire night. That had walked beside him. Talked with him. Comforted him. Waiting for perfect moment to reveal and destroy. The son made it out. One of the few who escaped. But at cost. Because real father was never found. Was somewhere in the village still. Either claimed during phase 5. Or still surviving somehow. Or lost in folded space inside building. Or transformed into spirit himself and now part of the trap. The son survived physically but carries knowledge that destroys him slowly. That he abandoned his father. That he trusted spirit while real father was suffering alone. That he followed false while real was lost. That his survival meant his father's doom. This is rule 7. Don't accept help. But refusing help from real companion means dooming them. And accepting help from false companion means dooming yourself. There's no correct choice. No winning strategy. Just different forms of failure. Rule 8. Do not light a fire. Fire is life. Warmth. Light. Protection. In most spiritual traditions, fire wards off evil. Purifies. Creates safe space. The instinct to light fire when in supernatural danger is ancient, primal, built into us at genetic level. But in the spirit village, fire is beacon, is signal, is invitation. The spirits were killed by violence. Their deaths involved fire, buildings burned, people burned, fire used as weapon. Fire triggers their trauma, their rage, their most violent memories. Lighting fire doesn't protect you. It summons every spirit in the village directly to your location. But you need light, especially during phase 1 and 2 when darkness is total. When moving without light means stumbling, falling, making noise, breaking things, violating Rule 5, don't touch anything, inevitably. So you bring artificial light, flashlight, torch, what? Something that provides visibility without flame. Reasonable solution. Should work. It doesn't, because light itself attracts spirits, not just fire. Any light. They're drawn to it like moths, like creatures evolved in darkness and programmed to investigate illumination. Your light makes you visible not just to your own eyes but to every spirit in range. Makes you target. Makes you vulnerable. But turning off the light means blindness. Means moving in absolute darkness. Which means breaking other rules inevitably. Means stumbling into buildings. Touching walls. Making noise. Triggering different sets of spirits through different violations. Damned with light. Damned without it. Catch-22 that has no solution. A man named Peter tried navigating without any light. Thought if he couldn't see the spirits they couldn't see him. Thought invisibility was possible through darkness. Thought blending into the night made him safe. His recording is audio only. Too dark for video to capture anything. Just sound. His breathing. His footsteps. His whispers to himself describing what he was doing. For the first hour it seemed to work. He moved slowly, carefully. Felt his way along paths. Avoided obstacles by touch. Stayed away from the spirits he could hear but not see. The darkness was friend. Concealment. Protection. Then he heard breathing that wasn't his own. Close. Too close. Right next to him. In the darkness. Something standing beside him. Close enough to touch. He couldn't see it. Could only hear it. Breathing. Regular. Patient. Waiting. Peter froze. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Trying to be statue. Trying to be nothing. Hoping the thing would move on. Would leave. Would lose interest. It didn't leave. Stayed right there. Breathing. Peter could feel heat from it. Body heat. Close enough that if he moved his arm slightly, he'd touch it. Close enough to feel its breath on his face. Close enough to smell it, and it smelled wrong. Like meat. Like death. Like something that should be decaying but is somehow still moving. Peter lasted 17 minutes frozen like that. His recording captures every second. The breathing. His own heartbeat so loud it's audible. The tiny sounds of something moving. Shifting weight. Adjusting position. Still right next to him. Still waiting. Then something touched his hand. Cold. Wet. Fingers. Gripping. Gentle at first then tightening. Peter screamed. Broke Rule 2. Broke the silence. Tried to run. Broke Rule 3. The darkness that had protected him became his enemy. He couldn't see where to run. Crashed into something. Fall. The recording captures the impact. The pain. The continuation of breathing that isn't his. Getting closer. Coming for him in darkness he created. Recording ends with Peter still screaming. Still thrashing. Still trying to escape in darkness so total he can't even see his own hands. The thing that touched him still there. Still breathing. Still waiting. Patient. Eternal. Now actively hunting because Peter gave it permission through screaming. Through breaking silence. through becoming prey instead of hidden presence. Peter's body was found with his recording equipment. His eyes were open, staring. But medical examination showed his eyes had been damaged. Not from trauma. From something else. Like he'd stared at something so intensely, so desperately, that the effort of trying to see in absolute darkness had damaged the organs themselves. Trying to see what couldn't be seen. What eyes aren't meant to perceive. What exists in darkness beyond darkness, where vision is impossible but presence is absolute. We've established 8 rules. Each impossible. Each contradicting others. But there are more. The complete list of rules documented from various sources. From traditional knowledge keepers, from spiritual authorities, from the fragmentary evidence left by those who failed, contains 17 rules total. Let me document the remaining 9. Each adds another layer of impossibility. Each removes another potential survival strategy. Each proves that the spirit village is not a dangerous place that might be survived with proper preparation. Its killing mechanism disguised as location. Trap with no escape regardless of choices made. Rule 9. Do not eat or drink anything found in the village. This seems obvious. Don't consume anything from haunted location. Basic survival wisdom. But the rule extends further than you'd think. It includes water from any source within village boundaries. It includes plants growing there. It includes anything edible you might bring with you that touches village ground or structures. Because everything in the village is spiritually contaminated. The earth itself is saturated with death. With binding magic. With 300 years of trapped souls seeping into soil. Anything that grows there draws from that contaminated earth. Anything that touches ground or walls absorbs residue. Water that flows through village picks up spiritual contamination the way it picks up minerals and sediment. Consuming anything contaminated creates internal connection. Puts spiritual contamination inside your body. Inside your blood. Inside your cells. Makes the claiming easier. Makes you part of the village from inside out. You're no longer just present in deadly space. You're carrying deadly space inside yourself. But this rule presents obvious problem. Humans need water. Need food. Can survive maybe 3 days without water in ideal conditions. Less time under stress. Much less time when experiencing the physical and emotional exhaustion the village creates. So bringing sufficient supplies becomes crucial. But how much is sufficient when time doesn't flow normally? When night that should last 12 hours might subjectively last days. When phase 5 might extend indefinitely. There's no amount of supplies that covers infinite time. No preparation that accounts for temporal impossibility. And there's another problem. The spirits know this rule. Know that humans need water. Need food. So they create situations where contaminated sustenance becomes only option. Where dehydration or starvation seems worse than risk of consumption. Where choosing death by thirst seems less attractive than risk of spiritual contamination. They manifest water sources. Clean-looking water in village well. In streams that don't exist outside village boundaries but appear inside them. Crystal clear. Cool. Perfectly safe looking. The perfect trap for someone desperate with thirst. Or they manifest food. Fruit growing on trees that weren't there yesterday. Grain stored in buildings that should be empty. Food that smells real. Looks real. Triggers every hunger response. Especially after hours or days of exhaustion. When judgment is impaired. When desperation overrides caution. A woman named Rachel lasted into phase 5. 17 subjective hours into the night. Her supplies exhausted. Her body screaming for water. Dehydration making her dizzy. Making her confused. Making her desperate. She found a well. Old stone well in village center. Water visible far below. Looking clean. Looking perfect. looking like salvation. Rachel knew the rule, knew not to consume anything from the village. But she also knew she would die without water. That dehydration was killing her. That lasting until dawn, if dawn ever came, required hydration. That she had to choose between certain death from thirst and possible death from contamination. She chose contamination. Lowered a bucket into well. Drew up water. Clear. Cold. Perfect. Her recording shows her drinking. The relief visible on her face. The immediate reduction in distress. The way her body responds to hydration after severe deprivation. For several minutes she seems better, stronger, more capable of continuing. Then it starts. The contamination working. She feels it in her stomach first. Not nausea. Something else. Presence. Like something alive entering her body. Moving. Spreading. Through her stomach. Into her blood. Through her veins. Up toward her heart. Up toward her brain. Rachel describes it on her recording. Her voice changing as contamination spreads. Becoming less herself. Becoming more like the spirits. Her words taking on cadence that isn't quite human. Her expressions shifting. Her entire presence transforming. She says, I understand now. The village isn't place. The village is state. You don't enter geography. You enter condition. And once you're in the condition, you can't exit. Geography is just where the condition is strongest. But drink the water and the condition enters you. Becomes you. Now I'm not in the village. I am the village. I'm part of the mechanism. Part of the trap. Part of what claims others. And I'll be here. Forever. Waiting. For the next person. To offer them water when they're desperate. To smile and say it's safe. To help the village claim them like it claimed me. Then Rachel's recording ends. Not by turning off. By her no longer existing in form that can operate recording equipment. Her body remained. But consciousness, whatever made her herself, had been absorbed. Replaced. Overwritten by village condition entering through contaminated water. Her body walked away from the recording equipment. Left it running. Documenting empty space. Until battery died days later. The body that had been Rachel became one more spirit. One more component of the trap. One more piece of village mechanism claiming next victim. This is Rule 9. Don't consume anything from village. But staying alive requires consumption. Requires water. Requires food. And the village ensures that eventually, through time manipulation, through exhaustion, through desperation, you break this rule. Contaminate yourself. Become claimed from inside out rather than outside in. Rule 10. Do not sleep. Sleep is necessary. Humans cannot function indefinitely without it. After 24 hours without sleep, cognitive function declines severely. After 48 hours, people begin experiencing microsleeps. Brief moments of unconsciousness they can't control. After 72 hours, hallucinations begin. After 96 hours, complete breakdown. But sleeping in the spirit village is more dangerous than any other violation. Because sleep is when conscious defenses drop. When you're most vulnerable. When the claiming can proceed without resistance. When spirits can access your mind directly without having to break through waking consciousness. The village knows this. Uses it. Time manipulation ensures that subjectively you've been awake far longer than is humanly sustainable. Exhaustion compounds. Stress hormones eventually deplete. Your body's biological need for sleep becomes overwhelming. Impossible to resist. You will sleep. Not choosing to. Just collapsing when body can no longer maintain consciousness. And when you sleep in the village, you don't dream normal dreams. You dream the village's dreams. The massacre. The binding ritual. The 300 years of trapped existence. You experience it. Live it. Become it. And when you wake, if you wake, you're not entirely yourself anymore. Part of you remains in the dream, in the eternal experience of trapped spirits. Part of them comes back with you into waking consciousness. Each time you sleep, more is lost, more is taken, more is replaced. Eventually you don't wake up at all. Not because you're dead, but because the consciousness that would wake isn't there anymore. Has been absorbed into collective dream of village spirits. Has become part of eternal trapped experience rather than individual living experience. A researcher named Michael tried to game this rule. He brought stimulants, powerful ones, enough to keep him awake for days if necessary. Chemical solution to biological need. Artificial consciousness when natural consciousness failed. His recording shows him taking pills, drinking energy drinks, using every method to maintain wakefulness. For first several hours it worked. He stayed alert, functional, able to make decisions, able to resist the claiming. But the village doesn't just make you tired physically. It exhausts you spiritually, drains your will, your desire to continue. The stimulants kept his body awake but couldn't keep his spirit engaged. Couldn't make him care about surviving. Couldn't give him reason to continue. Around hour 14, Michael's recording shows him sitting down. Just sitting, staring at nothing. His eyes open, his body upright, chemically prevented from sleeping. But consciousness somewhere else. Not present, not engaged, not really awake despite eyes being open. He stays like that for 3 hours according to recording timestamp. Motionless, eyes open, not sleeping but not truly awake, in state between. In liminal space where claiming works easily. Where conscious defense is gone but unconscious defense hasn't activated because body thinks it's awake. When Michael's consciousness returns, when he becomes present again, he's different. His recording captures this. The way he talks, the way he moves, the way he looks at camera. He's not entirely Michael anymore. Something else is there. Something that wasn't there before. Something that came in during the 3 hours of absent consciousness. He says, I saw them. While I was, wherever I was. I saw the other spirits. Experienced their existence. Felt what they feel. And it's not suffering. Not really. It's waiting. Eternal waiting. And the waiting becomes who you are. Becomes all you are. Until you forget you were ever anything else. Until waiting for next victim is the only thought you have. The only purpose. The only existence. And I'm part of that now. Part of the waiting. Even though I'm still alive. Still in my body. I'm also there. Also waiting. Also part of the trap. And I don't know which is real. My body or the waiting. This moment or the eternal moment. I'm both. I'm neither. Recording ends. Michael's body was found but Michael wasn't in it. Not in any meaningful sense. The body was alive. Breathing. But empty. Consciousness gone. Absorbed into collective waiting of village spirits. Body remained as shell. As vessel. But person was gone. Claimed not through death but through something worse. Through dissolution of self into collective. Through losing individuality to hive existence of trapped spirits. This is Rule 10. Don't sleep. But you must sleep. Body demands it. Biology requires it. And village ensures that even if you prevent traditional sleep, consciousness will lapse. Will create gaps. Will create spaces where claiming proceeds. Where you become part of trap whether your body is awake or not. Rule 11. Do not follow the lights. Strange lights appear in the village at night. Orbs. Glows. Floating illumination that moves through darkness. They look like lanterns. Like other people with flashlights. Like rescue teams searching for you. Like way out. Like safety. They're none of those things. They're manifestation of trapped spiritual energy. Or lures created by spirits. Or something else entirely. But following them leads deeper into village. Into most dangerous areas. Into spaces where claiming is strongest. into traps within traps. But lights are hope. In darkness, in isolation, in fear. Seeing light suggests other people, suggests civilization, suggests escape route, suggests someone is coming to help. The psychological pull is enormous, stronger than rational knowledge that lights are danger, stronger than rules, stronger than discipline. And sometimes the lights are accompanied by voices, calling, saying their rescue, saying their help, saying follow us to safety, using names, using information only real rescue team would know. Perfect deception. A team of 4 entered village together, planning to support each other, survive collectively. When they encountered lights during Phase 3, they assumed it was 5th team member who had been positioned outside boundary, who was supposed to monitor, who would enter only if needed to guide them out. The lights moved like person with flashlight would move, bobbing, weaving, moving at human pace. The voices called their names, used their coordinator's voice, said there was emergency, said they needed to follow quickly, said extraction had been moved up, said they needed to leave now. 3 of the 4 followed the lights. 1 hesitated. Something felt wrong. The urgency felt manufactured. The voice sounded right but timing felt off. Small doubt. Tiny hesitation. Enough to save her life. The 3 who followed the lights disappeared into village depth. Their recordings show them following, calling out to supposed rescue, following lights deeper, into areas that didn't match their maps, into structures that shouldn't exist, into spaces that folded in on themselves. Eventually they realized the lights weren't leading out, were leading in, were drawing them to specific location, specific building at village center, specific room inside that building, where claiming was strongest, where the original massacre had been most intense, where the binding ritual had been performed, where concentration of trapped spirits was absolute. The lights led them directly to epicenter of trap, to place where resistance was impossible, where claiming happened instantly, where even the strongest will dissolve immediately, where consciousness was absorbed so completely that even claiming couldn't be fought, even for seconds. Just instant transition from living to claimed, from individual to collective, from self to part of trap mechanism. The 4th team member who hesitated heard their screams on radio. Brief. Cut off suddenly. Then silence. Then minutes later their voices again. But changed. Using their voices to call to her. To say it was safe. To say come join us. To say the lights are showing the way out. To say follow. To become the lure themselves. To become part of trap using their own voices. Their own identities. Their own existence absorbed and repurposed as mechanism for claiming next victim. She didn't follow. Survived by refusing hope. By treating light as danger. By accepting that rescue would not come. That the only way out was through darkness. Through difficulty. Through methods that didn't look like salvation. She's one of the few who escaped. And she did it by violating every instinct that says light is safety. That says follow hope. That says rescue is coming. This is Rule 11. Don't follow lights. But lights represent hope. And hope in hopeless situation is almost impossible to resist. And Village knows this. Uses it. Creates perfect simulation of rescue. Of escape. Of salvation. That leads only to destruction. To claiming. To becoming part of mechanism that creates false hope for next victim. Rule 12. Do not try to communicate with the outside. Radio. Cell phone. Any attempt to contact people outside village boundaries. This seems counterintuitive. Why wouldn't you call for help? Why wouldn't you maintain contact? Why wouldn't you let others know your status? Because communication attempts attract specific type of spirit. The angry ones, the violent ones, the ones whose deaths were most unjust, who rage eternally against their binding, who respond to any attempt to connect outside their prison with fury, with violence. with immediate aggressive action. They perceive communication attempts as mockery, as someone rubbing freedom in their faces. As prisoner watching guard use phone to call home while prisoner has no such ability. It triggers their rage, focuses it entirely on you, brings concentrated violence that otherwise might be distributed or absent. But humans are social, cooperative. We survive through communication, through calling for help, through maintaining contact with support structures. Not communicating feels wrong, feels like giving up, feels like accepting isolation that makes survival less likely. And there's practical element. Support team outside needs to know if you're alive, needs to know if intervention is needed, needs status updates to make decisions. Not communicating means they don't know what's happening, can't help effectively, can't time rescue appropriately if rescue becomes necessary. But every communication attempt, every radio call, every text message, if they work at all, summons the angry spirits. Immediately, directly, with focused violence that overwhelms all other rules. That makes following other rules irrelevant because you're being actively attacked rather than carefully stalked. A man named Daniel maintained radio schedule with outside support. Check in every hour. Simple protocol. Say you're alive. Say status is unchanged. Acknowledge receipt of support team's transmission. Simple. Professional. Reasonable. First hour check-in went fine. Daniel reported status. Acknowledged support. Ended transmission. Normal protocol. Second hour check-in went fine. Same process. Same outcome. Third hour check-in, Daniel reported status and then paused. Said something was approaching. Said he was ending transmission. Said. Recording from support team captures what happened next. Daniel's microphone still transmitting even though he wasn't speaking. Sound of running. Heavy breathing. Then impact. Struggle. More impacts. Sound of violence. Sound of Daniel screaming. Sound of something that shouldn't make sound making it anyway. What? Tearing. Wrong. Then Daniel's voice again. But not Daniel. Something using his voice. Speaking through his radio. To support team. Saying, come help me. I'm hurt. Need assistance. Come into village. Follow my signal. I'm at, then location coordinates. Perfect. Accurate. Exactly where Daniel was supposed to be. Perfect lure. Using Daniel's voice. Daniel's radio. Daniel's coordinates. To draw support team into village. To add them to trap. To claim more victims. Daniel himself already claimed. Already part of mechanism. His communication attempt having summoned violence that claimed him instantly and now his existence. What remained of it was being used to claim others. Support team didn't enter. Protocol forbade it. But they heard their colleague's voice begging for help. Heard him screaming. Heard the violence. Heard the transformation from living person to claimed component of trap. And couldn't help. Couldn't intervene. Could only listen. Document. Bear witness. Knowing that any attempt to help would just add them to body count. To claim list. To trap mechanism. This is Rule 12. Don't communicate with outside. But communication is hope. Is connection. Is lifeline. And severing it feels like accepting death. Like giving up the only thing that might save you. But maintaining it summons violence that ends you immediately. Damned either way. Isolated by choice or destroyed for breaking isolation. Rule 13. Do not bring weapons. This seems wrong. Surely weapons help. Surely being armed improves survival odds. Surely the ability to defend yourself matters. But weapons in Spirit Village serve opposite purpose. They give false confidence. Make you think you can fight. Make you think threats can be addressed through force. make you more likely to take aggressive action when passive action is only option that isn't immediately fatal. And spirits respond to weapons as threat, as violence, as something that must be countered. You might carry weapon purely for defense, for security, for peace of mind. But spirits don't understand defensive versus offensive. They only understand weapon equals threat. Weapon equals violence. Weapon equals they must respond with greater violence. Bringing weapons escalates danger, ensures aggressive response, turns phase 1 through 3 into direct combat. Combat you cannot win, because spirits aren't physical, aren't stopped by physical weapons, aren't hurt by bullets or blades, are only alerted by your aggressive intent, only focused by your attempt at violence. But going unarmed feels wrong, feels stupid, feels like deliberately making yourself vulnerable. Every survival instinct says bring weapon, bring defense, bring something that might make difference in crisis. A group of military personnel attempted village entry, fully armed, trained, disciplined, thinking weapons and training and coordination would overcome what others couldn't. Thinking spirits might not be physical but could be intimidated, deterred, discouraged by show of force. They made it approximately 40 minutes, from sunset to full darkness. The moment weapons became visible, rifles, sidearms, knives, the village responded. Not with slow build-up, not with phases, with immediate overwhelming response. Every spirit, every angry one, every violent one, all focused on armed humans, all perceiving threat, all responding to eliminate threat. The military team's recording shows chaos, multiple spirits manifesting simultaneously, moving faster than anything physical, surrounding, attacking, not with physical contact necessarily but with presence so aggressive, so violent, so focused that the trained soldiers broke, scattered, ran, abandoned formation, abandoned training, abandoned discipline, just ran, dropping weapons, dropping equipment, dropping everything that might slow them. None of them lasted beyond phase 2. The weapons that should have protected them ensured their doom, made them targets, made spirits prioritize them above passive observers, made their destruction immediate rather than gradual. This is Rule 13. Don't bring weapons. But going unarmed violates every survival instinct, every training, every common sense. Yet weapons make you threat, and threats are eliminated immediately. While passive presence might be stalked, studied, slowly claimed, aggressive presence is destroyed on sight. Survival requires helplessness, requires abandoning every tool that might provide defense, requires accepting that you cannot fight, can only endure, can only witness, can only suffer whatever comes. Rule 14. Do not use your real name. Names have power. In many spiritual traditions, in many cultural contexts, especially African spiritual traditions, where true name is connection, is hook, is vulnerability. Speaking your real name in spirit village gives spirits access, makes claiming easier, creates bond they can exploit. So you should use false name, pseudonym, anything except true name. Simple precaution, easy to follow. But names are identity. Using false name feels like losing yourself, like abandoning who you are, like accepting dissolution before claiming even begins. And in crisis, in fear, in exhaustion, people revert to true identity. Respond to real name instinctively. Give real name without thinking when asked. Can't maintain false identity under extreme stress. And spirits ask, directly, during phase 2 and beyond, what is your name? Simple question. Social convention. Instinct is to answer, to give name, to identify yourself. And in moment of stress, real name comes out before false name can be substituted. The moment they have your real name, claiming accelerates, becomes easier, more direct, more complete, because they're not claiming anonymous consciousness anymore. They're claiming specific identity, known identity, named identity, the power of naming making their work simpler. A woman named Jennifer used pseudonym Sarah throughout her attempt. Maintained the false identity carefully. Didn't respond to Jennifer. Only acknowledged Sarah. Kept discipline through first 3 phases. Then phase 4. Village transforming. Spirits manifesting. One spirit approached directly. Elder woman. Looking kind. Maternal. Asking gently, "Child, what is your name?" Jennifer as Sarah responded, "Sarah." The spirit smiled, said, knowing, said, "No. What is your real name? I can see it on you. I can see who you truly are. The false name doesn't hide you. It just delays. Tell me your true name and I can help you. I can guide you. I can make this easier." Jennifer held firm. Said, "Sarah." The spirit sighed. Said, "Jennifer. That's your name. Jennifer. I know because you wear it. Your identity. Yourself. It's visible to us. We see what you are, not what you pretend to be. And we can call you. Call the real you. Call Jennifer. And Jennifer will respond even if Sarah doesn't want to." Then the spirit began calling, using Jennifer's real name, over and over, not loud, just persistent, gentle. Jennifer, Jennifer, Jennifer. Each repetition pulling at Jennifer's sense of self, making Sarah dissolve, making real identity surface, making false identity impossible to maintain. Jennifer lasted 19 minutes of this. Then she broke, responded, acknowledged real name, said, "Yes, I'm Jennifer." The moment she did, claiming accelerated. The spirits having her true name, her acknowledged identity, her self-admitted truth, using it as anchor, as hook, as direct connection to claim her more completely, more quickly, more absolutely. This is Rule 14. Don't use real name. But identity is core self. False identity can't be maintained under extreme stress. Real name emerges eventually. And when it does, claiming becomes easier, becomes more direct, becomes inevitable rather than just probable. Rule 15. Do not think about loved ones. Spirits in the village can sense thoughts, can feel emotions, can detect what you're thinking about by the energy your thoughts create. When you think about loved ones, family, friends, people you care about, you create emotional energy, strong energy. Energy spirits can detect, can track, can use. They see who you're thinking about, access your memories of them, learn their faces, their voices, their mannerisms, then manifest as them, appear as your loved ones, speak with their voices, call your name, beg you to come to them, to help them, to join them. Perfect trap. Using your own love against you. Using your own mind to create perfect lure. You generate the template. They fill it. You provide the vulnerability. They exploit it. So you must not think about loved ones. Must focus only on present. Only on survival. Only on immediate needs. Must treat emotional attachments as weakness that aids enemy. Must sever connection to everyone you love for duration of night. But this is asking humans to stop being human. We think about loved ones precisely when in danger, when we might die, when we need comfort, when we need reason to survive. Trying not to think about them makes thinking about them more likely. Forbidden thought becomes obsessive thought. The thing you can't think about becomes only thing you think about. And eventually, Through exhaustion, through stress, through hours of terror, you think about them. Can't help it. Can't prevent it. And spirits detect it instantly. Use it immediately. Manifest as that person. That face. That voice. Perfect simulation drawn from your own thoughts. Your own memories. Your own love used to destroy you. A father named Robert entered the village thinking of his daughter. 8 years old. His reason for surviving. His reason for attempting this at all, proving something to her, earning money for her, accomplishing something meaningful for her benefit. She filled his thoughts, his motivation, his core identity as father. The spirits detected this immediately. Within phase 2 they manifested as his daughter. Perfect. Exactly right. Her voice. Her way of speaking. Her mannerisms. Calling, Daddy? Daddy, where are you? I'm scared. Robert knew it wasn't real. Knew his daughter was safe at home. Knew this was trap. Knew Rule 15. Don't think about loved ones. Don't give spirits ammunition. But hearing his daughter's voice, even knowing it was simulation, broke him. Couldn't ignore it. Couldn't let even false version of his child remain scared and calling for him. Every instinct as father demanded response. Demanded protection. Demanded going to her even knowing her wasn't her. Robert followed the voice. Abandoned his defensive position. Abandoned his careful route. Abandoned his plans. Just followed. Calling back, I'm coming, sweetheart. Daddy's coming. The voice led him to building at village center. Into interior. Into folded space. Into trap. And as he entered, the voice changed. Still his daughter's voice, but wrong. Twisted. Saying things his daughter would never say. Knowing things his daughter couldn't know. Being something that wore his daughter's voice the way predator wears prey's scent. Robert's recording captures his realization. His horror. His understanding that his own thoughts, his own love for his daughter, had been used to destroy him. That the spirits could be perfect only because he provided the perfection. That his greatest strength, his love for his child, had become his fatal weakness. His last words on recording, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, baby. I gave them you. Gave them your voice. Your face. Made them able to use you against me. Made my love for you into weapon against us both. I'm sorry. Recording ends. Robert claimed. His love for his daughter, purest thing in his life, transformed into tool of his destruction. The thing he lived for becoming thing that ended him. This is Rule 15. Don't think about loved ones. But love is what makes us human. What gives us strength. What provides reason to survive. Asking someone not to think about loved ones when in mortal danger is asking them to stop being themselves. To abandon their humanity. To survive by becoming something less than human. And that's impossible. Survival requires reason. Reason is love. Love provides vulnerability. Vulnerability ensures doom. Rule 16. Do not show fear. Spirits feed on fear. Not metaphorically. Actually, fear is energy. Emotional energy that spirits, especially trapped, angry spirits, can absorb, can use, can grow stronger from. When you're afraid, you're giving them power, strengthening them, making them more capable of harming you. So you must remain calm, must control fear, must present emotionless facade, must deny them the energy they feed on. Simple in theory, impossible in practice. Because the village is designed to terrify. Every phase, every manifestation, every sound and sight and sensation is calculated to trigger fear. The spirits have had 300 years to perfect terror, to understand exactly what frightens humans, to create situations that bypass rational control and trigger pure instinctive panic. You cannot control fear when child spirit appears bleeding and crying. Cannot control it when familiar voice calls from darkness. Cannot control it when the building around you transforms. Cannot control it when claiming begins pulling you apart. Fear is biological response. Autonomic. Beyond conscious control when triggers are strong enough. And showing fear makes spirits stronger. More aggressive. More capable. Your terror feeding them. Making them more real. More powerful. More deadly. Vicious cycle where fear creates danger, creates more fear, creates more danger until spiral becomes inescapable. A meditation master named Chin attempted the village. 20 years of training. Absolute emotional control. Able to maintain calm through any circumstance. Thinking discipline and training could overcome biological fear response. His recording shows remarkable control through first 3 phases. Spirits manifesting. Voices calling. Village transforming. Chin remains calm. Breathing steady. Heart rate controlled. Showing no fear. Giving spirits no emotional energy to feed on. But phase 4 escalates beyond his training. The village doesn't just transform. It becomes wrong. Geometry that shouldn't exist. Physics that violates every law. Buildings that contain infinite space and finite volume. Time that flows backward while moving forward simultaneously. Reality breaking so completely that rational mind cannot process it. Cannot maintain calm when experiencing impossible. Chen's recording shows the moment his control breaks. A doorway. Simple doorway. But through it he sees outside and inside simultaneously. Sees himself from behind and in front at same moment. Sees his own back while looking forward. Space folded so completely that all perspectives exist at once. Impossible. Maddening. Breaking every rule of how reality should work. His breathing changes. Heart rate spikes. Voice becomes strained. Fear emerging despite decades of training. Despite perfect discipline. Despite absolute commitment to control. The impossible breaking through discipline by being simply too impossible to process without fear. The moment fear appears, spirits respond. Immediately. Like they've been waiting. Like they've been testing his control. Looking for crack. For weakness. For opening. They manifest stronger. More solid. More aggressive. Is fear feeding them? Making them more real than they'd been moments before when he maintained calm. Chin tries to regain control. Tries to reimpose calm. But fear once triggered is hard to suppress. Each new manifestation triggers more fear. More fear feeds more power. More power creates more frightening manifestations. Spiral accelerating beyond his ability to control. His recording captures the deterioration. From perfect calm to controlled concern to actual fear to panic to terror to something beyond terror. To state where fear is so absolute it becomes identity. Where he isn't person experiencing fear but fear experiencing brief personhood. Where self dissolves into pure terror and terror becomes everything. Recording ends with Chin screaming. Not words. Just sound. Pure vocalized terror. Fear so complete it cannot be contained in body anymore. Must be expelled as sound. As energy. As offering to spirits who feed on it. Who grow strong from it. Who claim him through it. This is Rule 16. Don't show fear. But village is designed to create fear. To bypass control. To trigger biological panic. And showing fear strengthens what's killing you. Makes survival less likely. Makes claiming more certain. Damned by feeling what any human would feel when experiencing what cannot be experienced without terror. Rule 17. Do not try to understand. This is the final rule. Perhaps the most important. Perhaps the one that makes all others make sense. Perhaps the one that explains why survival is truly impossible. The village operates on logic that isn't human logic, on rules that aren't physical rules, on time that isn't linear time, on space that isn't Euclidean space. Trying to understand it, trying to make sense of contradictions, trying to find rational explanation, this drives you insane. Because human mind needs understanding, needs patterns, needs things to make sense, needs cause and effect, needs logic. When faced with situation that violates all this, mind attempts to create understanding anyway, attempts to find patterns in chaos, attempts to impose logic on illogical, attempts to make sense of nonsense. This attempt breaks mind, creates cognitive dissonance so severe it fractures consciousness, creates stress so intense it damages brain, creates confusion so deep it prevents any functional decision making. Mind becomes enemy, intelligence becomes liability, thinking becomes trap. So you must not try to understand, must accept without understanding, must experience without processing, must witness without analyzing, must endure without questioning why or how or what it means. But this too is impossible, because humans are meaning-making creatures. We cannot not understand, cannot turn off analysis, cannot stop seeking patterns, cannot prevent mind from attempting to process experience. It's not choice, it's how consciousness works, how we're built, how we exist. A modern military unit attempted extraction, full tactical gear, thermal imaging, night vision, communications, weapons, coordination, support, everything that should provide advantage. They made it 18 minutes. The technology that should have helped did opposite. Night vision showing manifestations so clearly that fear was instantaneous. Thermal showing temperature patterns that violated thermodynamics and broke understanding. Communications attracting every angry spirit simultaneously. Weapons making them targets. Technology amplifying danger rather than reducing it. Even drone surveillance fails. Drones entering village space either crash immediately or transmit footage that causes viewers to experience symptoms similar to being in village directly. Fear, confusion, time distortion, claiming pulling at them through the footage, through the connection, through the witnessing. The village reaching through technology to claim those who observe remotely. Because the village isn't just place, it's condition, its state, its mechanism that exists partially in physical space and partially in spiritual space and partially in spaces that have no proper name. And once you're aware of it, once you've seen it even through camera, you're connected to it. And connection means vulnerability. And vulnerability means eventual claiming. The local communities understand this. The Zulu and Xhosa people who live near the village have maintained warnings for generations. They don't speak the village's name. Don't discuss it openly. Don't tell exact location. Don't describe it in detail. Because speaking of it creates connection. And connection means danger. Even words carry risk. They have ceremony for those who come too close. Spiritual cleansing. To break connection before it strengthens. To sever link before claiming begins. Using traditional methods. Sangomas, traditional healers, who understand spiritual mechanics in ways modern understanding cannot grasp. These ceremonies sometimes work. For those who came near but didn't enter. Who felt the pull but didn't experience the phases. Who connected weakly and can still be disconnected. But for those who actually entered, who experienced even phase 1, the connection is too strong, too deep, too complete. The ceremonies can only slow claiming, delay it, make it less painful, cannot prevent it entirely. So those few who escaped physically, who made it out before claiming completed, typically return. Not consciously, not intentionally. Their bodies walk back. At night, months or years later. drawn by connection that was never truly severed, drawn by claiming that proceeds slowly but inevitably, drawn back to village that marked them as claimed even though they briefly escaped its geography. They're found weeks later, not where they lived, where the village is, inside boundaries, sometimes their bodies, sometimes nothing, just evidence they returned, footprints leading in but not out, belongings left at boundary as if they undressed before entering, as if they shed their connections to living world before rejoining trapped existence that had claimed them long ago. This is the truth traditional wisdom understands, that the village doesn't just kill visitors, claims them, makes them part of itself, and once claimed, even partially, the claiming eventually completes. Geography becomes irrelevant. Time becomes irrelevant. You might escape physically for years, but you will return, because you're already part of village, already connected, already claimed, just experiencing delayed completion. The question then becomes, why does village exist? What purpose does eternal trap serve? What's the point of mechanism that claims everyone who enters and many who don't? The Sangomas have theory. The binding ritual that created the village wasn't punishment, wasn't revenge, was attempt at immortality. The attacking chief who ordered the ritual believed it would trap his enemies' souls while granting his own people eternal existence. That they could conquer death by conquering others' deaths. That binding could work both ways. It worked, but wrong. Everyone was trapped. Attackers and attacked. Binder and bound. All caught in eternal existence that isn't life. That isn't death. That isn't anything human consciousness was meant to experience. Eternal waiting. Eternal repetition. Eternal claiming of new souls to add to collective because collective is all that remains when individuals dissolve. The ritual broke something fundamental. Created wound in reality where the village stands. Created space where normal rules don't apply. Where trapped souls exist in state of perpetual binding. And that binding, that wound, that broken space, requires constant energy to maintain. Requires new souls, new claiming. New victims added to fuel the eternal trap that cannot end because ending would mean releasing all bound souls simultaneously and reality cannot handle that release. Cannot absorb that much death all at once. Would tear like fabric under stress. So the trap continues. Must continue. Will continue until something fundamental changes. Until someone breaks mechanism from inside. Until all bound souls are somehow released gradually rather than instantly. Until the wound heals rather than persists. But breaking mechanism from inside requires being inside. Requires being claimed. Requires becoming part of trap to understand trap well enough to break it. And claimed souls don't want to break trap. Don't remember wanting freedom. Don't remember being individual. Just exist as part of collective. Part of eternal waiting. Part of mechanism claiming others. No motivation to change. No memory of anything else. No desire except to add more to collective because collective is everything. This creates true impossibility. The village cannot be survived. Cannot be broken from outside. Cannot be broken from inside. Cannot be avoided because knowledge of it creates connection. Cannot be ignored because it exists regardless of acknowledgement. Cannot be destroyed because it's not entirely physical. Cannot be sealed because it's not entirely spatial. It just exists. Will exist. Has existed for 300 years. Will likely exist for 300 more. And 300 after that. Eternal trap claiming souls. Adding to collective. Maintaining wound in reality through the very souls it claims. Modern authorities know about it. Have attempted interventions. Have tried to quarantine it. Have tried to study it. Have tried to destroy it. All failed. All attempts result in more claiming. More victims. More additions to trap. So policy became containment. Keep people away. Don't acknowledge it officially. Let traditional warnings handle deterrence. Let local communities maintain their careful silence. But some still try. Skeptics thinking stories are exaggerated. Thrill seekers wanting ultimate experience. Researchers believing they can understand what others couldn't. Spiritual authorities thinking their power sufficient. Each believing they're different. Each believing they'll survive where others failed. None do. All follow same pattern. Enter at sunset. Experience phases. Attempt to follow contradictory rules. Fail inevitably. Die or get claimed. Become part of trap. Become part of statistics. Become warning for next person who thinks they're different. Who thinks they'll survive. Who thinks the impossible might be possible for them. This documentation exists to be clear. To be explicit. To provide no false hope. You would not survive night in Spirit Village. Not because you lack courage or preparation or knowledge or power, but because survival is not option. Was never option. The village is perfect trap refined over 3 centuries. Perfect mechanism that accounts for every variable. Perfect guarantee of claiming for everyone who enters and many who don't. The only winning move is not to play. Not to approach. Not to acknowledge. Not to seek. Not to think about too deeply because thinking creates connection and connection means danger. The village exists. Should be left to exist. Should be avoided absolutely. Should be forgotten if possible but remembered as warning if forgetting is impossible. Those who live near it know this. Have known for generations. Have maintained careful silence. Careful avoidance. Careful respect for boundary that must not be crossed. They don't see this as cowardice, as ignorance, as superstition. They see it as wisdom, as survival, as proper response to danger that cannot be overcome and should not be challenged. The spirits in the village are not evil, not in simple sense. They're trapped, suffering, existing in state that should not exist. They claim others not from malice but from mechanism, from nature of their binding, from wound in reality that requires fuel to maintain itself. They're victims who became components of trap that victimizes others, perpetuating cycle without choice, without awareness, without possibility of change. Perhaps one day the wound will heal. Perhaps the binding will weaken. Perhaps the trapped souls will find release. But that day is not today, is not tomorrow, is not within any living person's lifetime. The village will stand, will claim, will trap, will continue being place where you would not survive night, where nobody survives, where survival is not possible. This is Folklore Crypt. And remember, not all places are meant for human presence. Some territories belong entirely to forces beyond our understanding, beyond our control, beyond our survival. The Spirit Village is such a place, has always been such a place, will always be such a place. Respect boundaries, honor warnings, accept that some experiences are not survivable, that some knowledge costs too much to acquire, that some places exist specifically to prove that human courage and preparation and intelligence have limits. Hard limits. Absolute limits. Limits that cannot be overcome because they're not challenges. They're facts. Simple. Terrible. Undeniable facts. You would not survive night in Spirit Village. This is not insult. Not challenge. Not question. Just truth. Documentable. Provable. Absolute truth. Before the fire went out, that's when the best stories were told. And now the fire is out. The story is told. The warning is given. May you never need this knowledge firsthand. May you never test these truths personally. May you never discover if the documentation is accurate by becoming part of the documentation yourself. May you stay away. May you honor boundaries. May you survive by not attempting survival. That is the only way, the only option, the only path that doesn't end in claiming. This is Folklore Crypt.